increase of 490 kwacha, 41 ngwe. This rise was primarily driven by the non-food component, which increased by 452 kwacha, whilst the food basket experienced a more moderate increase of 36 kwacha, 38 ngwe. Within the food items, notable increases were observed in chicken, carpenter, and tomatoes, while prices for raw meal, other fruits, and bananas saw decreases. The significant surge in non-food costs was largely attributed to charcoal, whose unit price dramatically rose. This increase in charcoal is mostly influenced by both demand-side factors, such as the increased consumption during the cold season, and supply-side factors, as many part-time charcoal producers, who are often farmers, abandon the trade to tend to their harvests, given the recent February flooding season. Moving on, the cost of living from January to May 2025 in other towns as well. So the basic needs and nutrition basket, as we may know, covers 16 districts across the country, tracking the monthly expenditure required for essential food items and non-food items for a family of 5, offering a vital snapshot of household welfare from the month of January to May. Our detailed analysis of the basic needs and nutrition data from January to May reveals significant and varied dynamics in living costs across these 16 districts. Lusaka consistently recorded the highest BNNB cost, peaking at 11,599 kwacha in February 2025, underscoring the persistent challenge of elevated cost of living within the capital city. In contrast, Mongo consistently presented the most accessible costs, recording 5,889 kwacha in January 2025, while Chinsali largely remained around 6,000 kwacha threshold, highlighting the comparative affordability in certain rural areas. Across all monitored towns, the overall average basic needs and nutrition basket demonstrated a general upward trajectory from 8,075 kwacha in January to 8,634 kwacha in April, prior to a marginal moderation of about 8,506 kwacha in May. Beyond these aggregated figures, specific towns displayed notable fluctuations. Choma experienced a considerable increase in its BNNB, escalating from 6,419 kwacha in January to 8,039 kwacha in May, indicating a rapidly rising cost of living. Conversely, Chipata observed a notable decrease from 8,926 kwacha in January to 7,771 kwacha in May. While towns such as Mbika and Luanshya demonstrated relative stability, others like Solwezi exhibited significant volatility, reaching 11,019 kwacha in May following a reduction in April. The cost of living in from January to June 2025 in Lusaka. The estimated cost for a family of 5 in Lusaka increased by 962 kwacha from January 2025 to June 2025 at 11,763 kwacha. This increase is notably higher than the 886 kwacha increase recorded from the same period last year, when the BNNB rose from 9,555 kwacha in January 2024 to 10,444 kwacha in June 2024. The key findings from January to 2025 to June 2025 include: as of January, the BNNB in Lusaka stood at 10,800 kwacha. In February 2025, a significant increase was observed, with the BNNB rising to 11,599 kwacha. This surge was largely attributed to price increases in commodities such as vegetables, fruits, and carpentry. In March, a slight reduction brought the BNNB to 11,546 kwacha. While food items like carpenter and vegetables saw decreases, essential non-food items, particularly charcoal, experienced a price increase due to seasonal factors impacting production and transportation. In April 2025, the BNNB saw a further reduction to 11,417 kwacha, a decrease of 128 kwacha from March. This was influenced by reduced fruit prices and a drop in charcoal costs due to the transition from the rainy season to the drier season, which improved supply and ease of movement from production sites. In May 2025, a marginal decrease of 145 kwacha was noted, with a BNNB at 11,272 kwacha. This temporary relief was primarily due to seasonal gains, such as sweet potatoes replacing Irish potatoes as a more affordable option, and decreases in the cost of vegetables and fruits. And in June 2025, the cost of the BNNB surged to 11,763 kwacha, marking an increase of 490 kwacha compared to May 2025. This increase was notably driven by a significant rise in charcoal prices, where the unit price of a 90 kg bag increased from 226 kwacha from 510 kwacha in May to 736 kwacha in June, along with increased total cost for chicken and tomatoes. The consistently high BNNB figures highlight the cost of living remains beyond the reach of the majority of Zambians, especially when compared to the average formal sector earnings of 7,731 kwacha and the national average income of 5,369 kwacha in April 2025. This disproportionately burdens low-income households, underscoring the urgent call to prioritize the needs of the poor and vulnerable. While a recent bumper harvest and the appreciation of the kwacha signal positive macroeconomic shifts, particularly in agricultural output and input costs, these benefits are not yet translating into widespread relief, as persistent high costs in non-food essentials such as housing and charcoal, coupled with enduring supply chain and distribution inefficiencies, continue to exert substantial pressure on household budgets. I'll now hand over to my colleague for the rest of the statement.
All right, thank you so much, Kwesa. Assessments to the microphone. Good morning once again, and continuing on from where Kwesa has left off, from discussing our cost of living assessment through the basic needs and nutrition basket, allow me to move to our take on the overall inflation trends for Zambia in the first half of 2025, as well as our policy recommendations with respect to our findings both on the BNNB as well as our assessment of the inflation trends. And I begin. Our overall inflation trends analysis is based on the Zambia Statistics Agency Consumer Price Index. Zambia's overall annual inflation rate registered 16.7 in January 2025, indicating that on average, prices were 16.7% higher than in January 2024. By June 2025, this national rate had moderated to 14.1%, meaning the average price increase from June 2024 to June 2025 was 14.1%. For Lusaka province, according to the ZamStats monthly bulletins, the annual inflation rate was 14% in January and then it moderated to 14.7% in June 2025, reflecting a similar easing in price increases. This therefore means that, on average, the increase in prices has been slowing down. So prices are still increasing, but the rate at which they increase has been decreasing. Despite the overall national slowdown in inflation, specific commodity movements highlight persistent challenges at the household level. And according to Zamstats, it shows that national average reductions in staple food prices, with breakfast meal declining by 10.6% and roller meal by 9.9%, 9.19% from May to June in 2025. So there was that reduction in the price of meal over the last 2 months. These declines align with the JCTR's BNNB's observation of a decrease in roller meal prices for June. However, Zamstats also reported a 5.37% increase in the national average unit price of charcoal. So for Zamstats, they look at a 50 kg bag of charcoal from May to June. This upward movement in charcoal prices is consistent with a significant increase observed in the JCTR's Lusaka BNNB for the same period, confirming that high energy costs remain a notable pressure point for households, even amidst the broader inflationary deceleration. JCTR therefore makes the following recommendations, guided by principles of human dignity, justice, and the common good. Number one, government must enhance agricultural productivity and market efficiency. They must implement comprehensive strategies to stabilize food prices by strengthening agricultural production, improving supply chain logistics, and investing in post-harvest storage infrastructure. This includes promoting climate-resilient agroecological practices to ensure year-round availability and reduce price volatility caused by seasonal factors, demonstrating responsible stewardship of creation. Our second recommendation is that government must promote sustainable energy transition and access. It must accelerate the transition to sustainable energy alternatives such as LPG or gas, as is popularly known, and solar to reduce household reliance on charcoal, thereby mitigating price fluctuations and negative health impacts, whilst also reflecting care for our common home. Concurrently, government must optimize electricity tariffs and access for medium-density households to ensure affordability, recognizing essential human rights. So what we're saying is that the government must see to it that the incentives that are provided to the private sector with regards to the reduced cost of importing alternative sources of energy or equipment related to that must be passed on to the consumers, because we've seen government introduce these measures, but the cost, for example, of solar products, services, or equipment, even just the same LPG or the gas we're referring to, is outside the reach of most low-income households. We recommend, on the third point, that government must strengthen social protection frameworks and wage adjustments. Government must systematically expand robust social safety nets, including targeted and shock-responsive cash transfers and food subsidies, to provide a resilient buffer for vulnerable populations, affirming their fundamental right to human decency. Furthermore, align minimum wages and salaries with inflationary trends to ensure that the dignity of work is upheld through decent and fair wages for all workers. So we're therefore calling upon government to extend the price shock social cash transfer, especially in urban areas like Lusaka, where the cost of living is out of the reach, even, for example, for most social cash transfer households, So even just increasing the number of beneficiaries for programs such as Food for Work. Number 4, improve urban planning and essential service provision, because we observe that whereas it remains constant, but the cost of, say, rentals or housing has remained high, and is also a major contributor because it's constant most of the time to the cost of the non-food items. Government must prioritize investments in affordable housing solutions and ensure efficiency and equitable provision of essential services such as water, sanitation, and electricity, which constitute significant fixed costs for households and are fundamental to human well-being and participation in society. And lastly, we recommend that we should foster inclusive economic growth and market governance. Government must implement robust market monitoring mechanisms to prevent price manipulation and ensure fair trade practices, particularly for essential commodities. Simultaneously, promote policies that encourage broad-based economic participation, supporting smallholder farmers and youth entrepreneurship to drive sustainable and equitable growth that serves people, not just profits. This collective pursuit of justice and peace is vital for our one human family. In conclusion, JCTR remains committed to advocating for a just Zambian society where everyone enjoys the fullness of life. We urge the Zambian government to ensure that even as they prepare the 2026 national budget, before it goes to the House, the executive or the Minister of Finance must ensure that it truly reflects a preferential option for the poor, protects the dignity of all citizens, and promotes integral human development. Thank you. That's the end of our statement.
All right. Thanks a lot for the presentation. That goes to the team. Right now, we'll get into our Q&A session. If there's anyone with a question to ask, please feel free to ask. But as you do, introduce yourself and the media outlet you are representing, then go on to ask your question. Please go ahead. Are there any questions?
So maybe there were some expectations from some of the colleagues. One thing, again, which we should take note of is that because of our preferential option of prioritization of the welfare of the poor, low-income households, our BNNB therefore focuses on the basic essentials that they consume. And you can see from our assessment time and again that even when we have positive macroeconomic fundamentals obtaining in our country, which obviously can be argued is a fact based on the assessments, what the records are showing. However, this rarely affects the poor households within a short period of time. And you can see that, for example, because of there were some reductions, as you noted in the BNNB for the month of June is over the period, but there are still some major cost drivers that have continued to make life difficult for most households, especially those residing in the urban areas. So it's important that our economic policies are inclusive, that we also look at how poor households are going to benefit, even when we talk about certain economic indicators being favorable or improving. So I thought we would just share our views on that.
Okay, so just a reminder, this is a hybrid event. We are also streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, as well as LinkedIn and on X. So if anyone online feels there is a question they need to ask, please feel free to ask that question. Just comment under our live feed. So we get back to our journalists here. Is there anyone with a question? Okay. Yes, we've got 2 questions.
My name is from Daily News. And when your presentation, you mentioned of energy transition, where the government needs to invest more in energy. I'd like to find out as JCTR, do you think the government is doing enough for the community, especially for the energy sector? Do you think the government is doing enough according to your recommendation?
Okay, thanks for the question. We can have the second question.
My question may tilt a little bit away from what is being discussed, but I feel maybe it might be tied to this. I just wanted to find out from your analysis as JCTR, how has been how best can I put this? The disparity gap between the low income earners household and the average one. So how has been the disparity gap in relation to how people might be fared in terms of the basic food basket?
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll take a third. Yes.
Mine is really an observation. I mean, from what has been happening in the economy, I can bet you every one of us, and I speak on my own behalf and indeed on everybody else that is probably watching even online. We're really hoping to see that the BNNB for this for June had decreased, looking at how even inflation itself had reduced, and the reduction of the inflation was as a result was being driven by a downward movement for certain food prices. So then it means that all these gains that are on paper are yet to benefit the locals, are yet to benefit the ordinary Zambian. What is it that we're not doing to be able to make sure that our people or the Zambian citizens are able to benefit from these gains? Just yesterday, we saw Zambia being, praised by a United Nations report that we were one of the best performing reform countries in terms of our economy. So then, what are we not doing? Why is there no correlation between what everybody else, even from the outside world, is seeing from what it is that the local Zambians are experiencing? I would also want to just borrow my colleagues' word. Where is the disparity? What is not adding up to be able to see the things that we're seeing on paper in reality?
Okay, thank you. So those are 3 questions. I hope we can direct who should respond to which question.
I think because I will start with the one on the disparities.
I think I can respond to your earlier question regarding disparities, particularly for low-income households. Thank you so much. Okay, I think to respond to your question, allow me to, highlight the level of inequality that I think currently exists in the country, which hasn't improved since the last living conditions monitoring survey was conducted. I think especially from last year, 2024, when we also experienced a terrible drought, we also understood that a lot of households were further pushed into poverty. So looking at that, one thing we can look at is we also try to highlight from the statement is the average national income, which was about 5,369 kwacha. But we know that that's a national average income, and there are even households that earn a lot less than that. When we look at the income levels in the informal sector or at household sector, there are income levels that are much lower than 5,369 kwacha. So looking at the different income levels of this household, and we are all subjected to the same costs when we go to the markets. So another thing that I think my colleague highlighted is the data we collect is from markets. So you would understand that, for example, if you go to a more centralized or general market like City Market or Soweto, regardless of your income level, we're all subjected to the same amount, the same prices on the markets. And that is why it's very important that we are highlighting these income inequalities for households. And also another thing that we mentioned in our recommendations was looking at the minimum wages for different households, because especially for those in the lowest income levels, they are mostly affected because they are not able to afford even the most essential commodities, or they have to compromise on their living standards and living conditions, which at this point we're highlighting affects their human dignity. So in terms of the disparity, I would say it is still very prevalent in terms of income inequality that we are able to see in the country. Thank you.
So maybe just to intersect, I would want to add on something. We see those economic indicators that are positive so far, by the kwacha gaining weight against the dollar. As you pointed out, what we should bear in mind is that some of these economic measures will take time to trickle down to the vulnerable. And that is why we're emphasizing, instead of the trickle down policies, we should accompany those with the trickle up, okay? Policies which are inclusive, economic policies, where we see, because our research is evidence-based. So when you go you do a home satellite survey, you ask people how much access they have to basic needs. For example, food, it's a basic need. Water, clean water and sanitation, that's a basic need. How much access do they have to education? So until many people have access to that, you cannot claim that the economic measures have made an impact. So it's just about the GDP, which may mainly serve the upper class. So our concern is that what the upper class or the elite who have major business enterprises are enjoying should also be enjoyed by the people who have smaller businesses, the common person, because our concern is that to measure how development is progressing in Zambia economically, you have to see the inclusivity, okay, which is there, the population that is having access to those social services. Because every government and policies, economic policies, have to emphasize social services to all sectors. So I think that's why these suggestions we're making, or strategies, to encourage the broad-based economic benefit. So those indicators we have to see for us to come and again evaluate how efficient they are by how many people have access to those social services. That's what I wanted to include.
All right. So there was also a question as to whether the government has done enough to enhance low-income households or communities' access to both clean, alternative, but more importantly, affordable energy sources. So we would say on the supply side, yes, government last year introduced some measures that would enable the importers of equipment of other or technology for alternative energy sources much easier by reducing some duties and even just suspending some. And that was a positive response, given the situation that the country was almost in a total blackout period the whole last year. However, on the demand side, there hasn't been enough action taken by government to see that low-income households are benefiting from those policies which they've put in place. And that's why we are seeing that consumers are being exploited because the market forces or the businesses are exploiting the fact that consumers are in desperate need of alternative sources of energy, given that hydroelectricity is not in constant supply, almost no supply in other areas, and they take advantage of the demand, so the aggregate demand, and decide to increase prices. And that is why in one of our recommendations, even now, when we look at some of the positive macroeconomic indicators we've seen in Q2, we're saying the relevant government agencies must move in to curb price manipulation to ensure that households are not being exploited. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of introducing these policies, which also speaks to the other question on, positive macroeconomic indicators translating into actual benefits. Because the government introduces these policies and they don't ensure to it that the intended outcomes being experienced by communities, it means the only people who are benefiting are those who are already rich. And that's why in our preference to advocating for the welfare of the poor, we are concerned equally as you are, but we must also put into context some of the macroeconomic indicators that we're talking about as a country. For example, the appreciation of our local currency. What are the factors causing this? If we look at the bumper harvest at which stage are we at, the reduction in fuel prices and all that. For example, the reduction in fuel prices, we see that the market forces are quick to react to an upward adjustment, but very slow to react to a downward adjustment. So that is a problem. That is where the role of government therefore comes in, to see to it that even when the economic is perceived to be doing well, poor households are benefiting. Then secondly, we also have to appreciate that the poor, and that's why they are poor in Zambia, because they rarely participate in the economy. So even when you have inflation, it means that the poor may not necessarily benefit immediately from there. But we also have to appreciate, for example, if you look at an indicator like inflation, it just shows, it means the prices are increasing. But it just shows that the increase is very slow, all right? So it doesn't mean when it reduces, like the way it has come to 14.1%, and the other month it was 16.1%. It's just saying last year in June, if you are buying something, say at 100 kwacha, it has probably increased by 14 kwacha or 14 if my math is right. So prices are still increasing, and that is why when you look at our BNNB in January to February, there was that significant increase from 10,800 kwacha per family of 5 in Lusaka to 11,000, about 11,600 kwacha. Whereas this increase between May and June is slightly smaller. So those are some of the dynamics that we have to look at. The inflation might be there, all these fundamentals are there. And also we must, like Father Nrenda has attributed, I know we anticipate within a week if our currency appreciates, then we think everything changes. We need to sustain this appreciation. Remember, government targets a single-digit inflation rate, so as much as 14 is a win, it shows a downward trend. However, our target is single-digit. Why? It's because we know that when we get to single-digit, that's when we'll be able to see the real effect. So currently, from our analysis of the BNNB, the net effect of this, of the inflation rate, the reduction in fuel prices, appreciation of the local currency over the last half of the year is very minimal on low-income households currently. Thank you.
Okay, I see we are now getting more questions. Yes, please go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Nadia Kuida, the Development Professor of Institutions Communications Office. I just want to find out, does JCTR take time to maybe engage with governments on a physical basis where to be meetings and that kind of arrangement when you talk about these things, or it's just maybe monthly you write your press statements and that's it, they hear it from social media and everything, or do you actually get to talking with them?
Okay.
Then Eddie, you are the experts and in interrogating all these costs, the rise in the cost of living and all that. But then, where do we strike the balance? Because when we engage with those in government, they would argue that they are doing all they could to ensure that they lower the cost of living. And others would say it's favorable where it is looking at different economic fundamentals at play. So where do we balance? I mean, where do we strike the balance with your position and those in government?
First of all, I think I will take the last question. But the first question on our engagement with government, yes, we also implore the media to cover some of our engagement. We engage a lot, we sit on technical working groups set up by the government, but at the same time also oftentimes invite government to some of our activities, both here at national level and at the local level. So recently, as part of our 2026 national budget proposals, we proposed a reduction in pay as you earn for the year 2026. And the government invited us, the Ministry of Finance, because our basis was this BNNB, and they wanted to learn a bit more. So yes, we do make proposals and submissions, and some are considered, but we feel most of them obviously are not considered. For example, we've been advocating for what you would call a cost of living reflective wage. Also, as much as we're talking about cost reflective tariffs in the NH sector, we should also have cost reflective salaries in law by government. And we've also been advocating for government to relook this monthly adjustment of fuel and the impact it's having on households. We see that is not being taken on board, but there have also been years where some of our recommendations are adopted. So yes, the BNNB is just one of the activities. Beyond the BNNB and even before the BNNB, there is still those linkages into economic policies by government, also engaging with them. So we do engage, we don't do this in isolation, but they also engage us a lot more than we even do the BNNB. So yes, there is that, and we would invite you to go to our JCTR website and have a look at some of the reports. Even our social media platforms will show you progress we are making in terms of engaging government on these issues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I can respond to the second question in finding the balance. I think to respond to your question, I'd just like to re-echo what that he shared in regards to what is being done and what we find in a balance between what is being done and if it's reflecting in people's lives. I think there we can share that what we would like to see or what we would want to see is that many of these actions, whether they are policy recommendations, strategies, and initiatives, ultimately reach the people they are intended for. So there are some actions, obviously, I think we have acknowledged, I think we see many pronouncements, we follow through government policies, initiatives, different programs that are being initiated. And what we look at also is, are these programs ultimately responding to the needs of the people? Are they catering to the issues that people are raising, whether it's looking at incomes, it's looking at employment levels? Are these actions ultimately looking to sustain people's lives and improving them? And what we're seeing is that people's livelihoods have not improved despite certain actions being put into place. And as citizens, as civil society, I think we still have roles to play because even as certain programs and initiatives are being put across, we continue to offer checks and balances. We continue to ensure that they reach the intended beneficiaries. We continue to also monitor whether these funds are ultimately being utilized prudently. So prudent utilization of financial resources, given that we can acknowledge that yes, we have been constrained as a country, maybe with in regards to our finances, and that has often affected the kinds of programs and initiatives people can receive. However, I think we still have a lot more to do. We can still do better as a country. We can still continue to participate as citizens, as civil society, as media houses in the different roles that we continue to play.
Okay, just to add, to add to what the other two have said, and the question on the second question, I would focus on what I may call human flourishing, which should be, I think, a measure for us to meet between the government's policies and social justice. And so we have to look at not just the gross domestic products of product and GDP, as we know, which measure just the goods and services produced over a period of time, and which reflect how much, especially the upper class, are doing. There are foreign entities doing business, individuals are doing very well. But now, when you look at human flourishing, it looks at all the citizens. Are they flourishing? Are their potentials being realized? So the common good should be the goal for all of us, which include all the services and conditions that will promote the well-being of every Zambian and every person that is within the country. So we're looking at Zambians and others who are still in this country. So, like they have already said, if the policies are positive, okay, when you see the appreciation of the kwacha, reduction in fuel price, okay, you see those indicators, we're going to see how long are those going to stand. Then we're going to see what impact do they have on the lifestyle of the people. So we should go beyond GDP to see how much access people have to these key social services, which we cannot belabor. We only look at education. How many people have access to that? Is it only the elite or everyone else through the let's say bursary? Okay, do people have access to that? So that even the poor, who is intelligent, can realize their potential, because we want each person to live fully. And we should remember, I keep on reminding people sometimes that sometimes we say these are market forces, but tell me, do market forces have brains? There are people behind those market forces that affect the policies. So what we are calling for here as JCTR is deliberate policies that are skewed towards the poor. That's the measure. When you meet that, if you have a majority of the population has access to amenities, social amenities, and also all the conditions of service, social services that can make them realize their potentials economically, then we can say we're meeting a middle ground. Otherwise, these policies, if they are benefiting a few, they are not helping the citizens. So that the measure is how many people have access to the common good, how many people can flourish, given these indicators that we are seeing.
All right. Unless anyone has a question, we end today's briefing. Thanks a lot.
So thank you so much.